Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Showing Up to Your Life podcast and YouTube channel. You know, my name is Art Burns, and you know that I am very excited to be here with you today. And it's true. You know I say it every day, and we kind of make a joke out of it at this point, but it is true. And I mention this all the time, too, that, the truth of this is very important, right? Because it's based on something very specific. There's something that's very specific that gets me excited to talk to this webcam every day and speak into this microphone every day and to deliver these thoughts, this information, these practices to you every single day, right? And yes, I do like talking about this. There's no question about it. It's not like it's some kind of, difficult thing for me to get into or anything. I love it, and a lot of times I'll start the podcast and I'll feel like, I'm kind of not in the mood today, whatever. But like as soon as I start talking, I'm feeling excited. So that's why it's always very, very true. But that one reason, right? The one, defining reason for my happiness is very, very simple. It's you, because you are out there. You're listening, you're sending me some feedback, you're asking me questions, you're telling me how much you benefit from this work. And that's what gets me so excited to do that. And that's why even on days where I might not be feeling great, I might, be kind of, maybe I got a lot going on, like a lot of different appointments in a day with clients. And it's just, maybe I didn't sleep well last night. Some of these things are true about today. But it doesn't matter, right? Because this excitement pushes me forward. It motivates me into my enthusiasm, and the enthusiasm it feeds my excitement. And so it's all for you, right? It's all because of you that I get excited to do this every day. So it's true. When I say that I'm excited every day, it's very true. And it's because of you. And I thank you for that. I really do. Because you know what? This does benefit me as well. And that's, as you know, I've said this before, you may remember, it may not, but, every meditation that I ever guide someone through, which I'm doing another one tomorrow night, which I'll give you a little reminder and put something in the description below. But every guided meditation that I ever host, right? Every time I have somebody come through meditation, and including every single person that I've ever taught how to meditate, okay, the intention is always that this practice is good for me, but it's also good for everyone whose lives I touch every day, right? And that, I say me, but it's you, right? Like if I'm teaching you how to meditate, or if I'm guiding you through a meditation, then at some point, usually in the very, very beginning, I say that you're doing this practice for your own benefit and for the benefit of those whose lives you touch every day. Right? Because that's the thing, right? And that's the same thing with this work, right? I'm doing this work for you, right? I'm doing this so that you can benefit from this knowledge, from these thoughts, this understanding, these practices, right? And I know that you do benefit. And I know that if anybody out there does the practices that I've talked about here, or when I'm working one-on-one with you, if you do the practices that I kind of assign you, I don't like to use that word assign, but the practices that I inspire you to do, well, it's going to work. It can't fail. These practices have been around for 2,500 years. And so they work, right? They definitely work. And so just knowing that just makes me so happy. So anyway, as I said, I am doing my usual midweek mindfulness meeting. I don't remember what we're calling it these days, but it's the Wednesday evening guided meditation and chat. That's what I like to call it. My partner Adam, he does the Saturday sit, he calls it, and he likes to call it a Dharma talk, right? Which is a Buddhist concept, right? Dharma is kind of the way, right? If you were talking to a Taoist, it would be the Tao, right? It's the way, it's the truth, it's the thing that makes life go, kind of, right? And so on Saturdays, it's a very Buddhist oriented kind of teaching, and so he uses the formal traditional term for that, which is Dharma talk. For me, it's much more of an open-ended kind of free form conversation. I do a meditation. And then I listen more, more than I even talk, And a lot of times it's not even, people talking directly to me and me being some sort of pivot point, but people are actually talking together. And that is really exciting because that's what community is all about, right? Like I come to this space to help to lead this thing, but the community is really what matters. That's the focus, right? And so if the community can be sort of self-organizing and not rely on me to facilitate the communications, well, that's all the better. And that's what's happening every single week. So if you're interested in this, I really encourage you to check it out. It's totally free. We're not even taking donations for this work just yet. I mean, eventually we're going to start asking for some donations because it does cost us money every month to do this. But for now, it's totally free. And so there's nothing to lose for sure. It's exactly an hour. We rarely go even 5 minutes over, and it's a great time. So if you're available tomorrow at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, that would be 8 p.m. on the East Coast. I'm sorry, 9 p.m. on the East Coast, 8 p.m. Central, and 6 o'clock on the West Coast. So if you're around for that, I would love to have you join us. I really would. And so I'll put a link in the description below so that you can register for that. You got to register on Meetup first, and that way you get the reminders and you get the link and all that stuff. So check it out. All right. And speaking of learning to surf, that's the sort of project name that we use. Adam, my partner, Adam Asdell, and me, we use this. He made up the learning to surf, and I love it. So I say it as many times as I can. But the learning to surf is not just these meetings. There's also a podcast involved. And I know I've mentioned that to you. And I have to tell you, I'm super, super excited. Now, Adam and I are going to do every week we do what we call the Adam and Art Hour, right? Where we spend about an hour just talking, just having a conversation about mindfulness, about where Buddhism and science of mindfulness kind of revolve around each other and where they overlap a little bit. And we also just talk about all kinds of things, like the benefits of meditation was one topic. How to meditate is another. Loving kindness is another topic. We always come up with just new topics every week, and it's so exciting. But this week, I am so excited because I just yesterday, for the first time ever, I recorded an interviewed podcast from, that I was the interviewer. I've never done that before. I've done plenty of podcasts where I was the interviewee, but never before have I been an interviewer. And let me tell you, folks, I rocked it. I'm not even going to hide it. I am so proud of myself. It came out so great. I mean, I just kind of, and it's funny. My wife was asking me last night. She was like, well, did you rehearse? Did you have your questions written out ahead of time? Like tell me, how did you do it? I was like, I just showed up, I just showed up as me. And that's what I do with these videos too. And this is what I do with my meditations. This is what I do with my clients. And that's really what it's all about. And that's what mindfulness helps us to understand, right? That it's all about just being authentic and being authentic in this present moment to who we truly are. And when we can do that, right, when we can align ourselves with our own true authentic nature, I got to tell you, it seems very simple, and it is, but when you do this, everything tends to just fall into place. And it's really beautiful to see it happen. It's beautiful to see it happen in others, and it's especially true when you see it happen in yourself. So that's another sort of, well, anyway, I want you to check out that podcast because Aitabe is the person who I interviewed. She's actually my personal coach, and she is an amazing person, a wonderful, amazing human being that I wish everybody in the world could get to know Aitabe because you'd be better off knowing her, trust me. And so, like, if you like me, you're going to love her. But yeah, that episode should drop later this week, and I'll certainly let you know. But tomorrow night is the meditation for learning to surf. So please join us if you like. All right. So for today, Here, and this is the downside of just kind of, just showing up and doing this, tend to go off topic sometimes, but you know that already and you seem to be okay with it. So I'm just going to keep being me, until it's not working, and then I'll figure out why. And then you know what happens is, though, when you start to question, like, is it something about me that's wrong here? Is it something about me that's bothering people? Is it something about me that's ruining something, right? Well, more often than not, when you explore what part of you that is, you'll find that was one of the parts that was not authentic. All right, but we'll talk about that in another episode. Today, I want to talk about anger. I know that's a bummer. That was not a smooth segue at all. But my interview skills are great, but that was not a good segue. Because anger is not something that people like. It's not fun. It doesn't feel good. It actually feels really bad. And it's actually supposed to feel bad in a really weird way. And I'm going to explain to you why that is, right? It was for the same reason that stress feels bad, right? It's not something that we're designed to carry a lot, right? Like, you're not supposed to get angry very often, right? But anger is a very useful and powerfully useful emotion for us, right? And so this is where, anyway, let me tell you the origin, the inspiration for this topic today, right? I was driving my car. I think I was in the car somewhere in Denver the other day, and I passed a billboard that said something about anger management. Then I kind of giggled to myself, I was like, isn't that cute that people think they can manage anger? That's a good one. Pardon me, I just needed a little sip of water here. And the reason why I giggle, it certainly is no laughing matter. I mean, I don't mean to laugh at people who are having a difficult time with anger, because hello, that was me, right? Like, I was the angry guy all the time. And I was a guy who ruined many relationships. I was a guy who closed many opportunities off to myself. I was a guy who got myself in just about any kind of trouble you could possibly get yourself into through anger. I did. Okay, so if you're listening to me and you're saying, well, what is he laughing about? This is, it's no fun. It's not funny being in, having difficult managing your anger. Please understand, I'm not laughing at your expense. At least that's not my effort. My intention, I should say. What I'm laughing at is the management part of that, right? The idea that we can manage anger, right? Because you can. You can't really manage any emotion, right? And normally we don't try. We only talk about anger management, right? Because anger is the kind of thing, like I just described, it ruins things, right? It breaks relationships. It costs people jobs. It causes car accidents. It causes abuse between people. It causes all kinds of difficulty. So usually when somebody is entering into some anger management, program of some sort, it's because their life has taken a big toll on, as a result of anger. Okay. And again, hello, that's me. Right. And so please understand that I'm giggling at the whole concept of this managing anger, right? Because we don't manage any emotions. Right. And even though, and of course the terminology, I mean, we won't get into a semantic, debate here or anything like, well, one person debate, I guess, which it's, more common than you might think. Not with me anymore. Used to be back when I was an angry guy, I would constantly, have these inner, fighting going on inside my mind. And that was part of the anger. That's part of what made way for that anger. Right. But that doesn't happen to me anymore. Okay, so I just want to be very clear about that. So let's talk about anger, right? And so one of the reasons why, why it's kind of absurd to think of managing anger, right? Because that makes it signifies, that term to me signifies that somehow in that place of anger, right? Which the physical manifestation of anger is what we call rage, right? Like that's when we're like shaking, we're barely in control, if at all in control, right? We're red in the face, or like my ears always used to get very red. I had a girlfriend years ago who'd laugh at me. She could tell when I was angry because my ears got bright red. Something I couldn't hide, so as much as I was saying, I'm not angry, it's like my ears are flaming red. She's like, yes, you are. Anyway, So the thing about any emotion really, but anger is a specific one that causes all these big trouble. Like happiness doesn't ruin relationships or cost jobs or get into car accidents and stuff like that, right? Neither does shame, neither does grief, neither does guilt, neither does jealousy maybe sometimes, but jealousy is connected to anger, and that's the point, right? That anger in and of itself is actually not an emotion. It's not a primary emotion. Psychologists will tell you that anger is what is called a meta emotion, right? Meta emotion meaning an emotion of an emotion, right? So anger is an evolution. It's an evolved emotion, right? And so it's evolving from something else, right? Which all emotions are that, right? As we've talked about, right? If you boil all the possible potential negative emotions, if you boil them all down, at the very base, at the very root of every one of them is going to be fear, right? Like that's the whole thing, right? And so fear can cause something like jealousy, right? Jealousy can cause something like anger, right? So you see how it evolves, right? And so so that's why I don't use the word, management when it comes to anger. And actually, I'm about to make a cool announcement here that I'm going to be doing a program specifically designed to processing and regulating anger, not managing anger, right? Because again, in my mind, there is no managing anger, right? There's either regulating yourself before anger happens, or there is processing the anger, okay? Now, before I go one step further, this is where I have this obligatory announcement to make, and this is really serious, okay? So really make sure you listen to what I'm about to say in the next sentence. It is never about ignoring or avoiding your anger or suppressing your anger. It is never about that. And anyone who tells you that that's the thing that you're trying to do, right, that you're trying to somehow stuff your anger or suppress your anger or avoid your anger or any of these kind of concepts, I'm going to ask you to call me if somebody tells you that, because seriously, you gotta treat that carefully, because somebody teaching you how to suppress your anger is actually setting you up for potentially, I don't mean to be dramatic here, but potentially life-threatening diseases. Right. And that's no joke. Right. As Dr. Gabor Mate says, I refer to this all the time. He wrote a book called When the Body Says No, which is examining the connection between stress and disease. Right. But throughout the book, he keeps saying, Dr. Mate was at one point in his career for several years, he was a palliative care doctor, meaning people were there to die. It was too late to do anything about them, for them, right? It was too late to cure whatever they were suffering from. And most of it was cancers and other life-threatening diseases, obviously. But in palliative care, it's something we call around here, hospice, which is, again, it's at that point where there's nothing left to do except make you comfortable for the final days of your life. Right. And what he found in talking to people in the palliative care unit where he worked is that, almost all of them had at some point in their life had a struggle with expressing and processing their anger. All right. Like that's how serious this is. Okay. So anybody ever tells you just don't be angry or just avoid angry, be positive, stuff your anger away, run away from it, whatever, any of that stuff, it's very, very dangerous what they're telling you. So please, if you hear that, call me, because I want to talk to you. Okay. Seriously. And it costs you nothing. Okay, I don't care. I'll pay you $1 to call me because it's that important, right? It really is. Like it could mean the difference between life and death at that point. Okay, so moving on. I like to be very careful about that, because it's something that we often do, right? Like a lot of people say that, like parents a lot of times, when their kids are angry, right? And their kids are, erupting with this anger, right? That's when the parents say, you got to be polite. You got to, go to your room until you get over your anger. And this is, again, what we're doing is teaching kids that it's not okay to be angry. And that's a problem, right? Now, how anger is handled, I almost said managed, which is an interesting thing. And maybe I'm wrong about what they say about anger management. Maybe it is more about managing it in the sense of processing it, in the sense of keeping it from, ruining our lives. Maybe that's what they mean. If that's the case, I stand corrected. But the idea there is, well, first of all, let's talk about what anger is, right? So like any other emotion, anger is there to motivate you. Right. And specifically, anger is, again, because it's part of the negative emotional scale or spectrum, it is there to motivate you away from things that you fear. Right. And so anger, a lot of times, we might think like, well, if it's so harmful for us, like, why would we have it? Right. Well, anger is very much, in that respect, is very much like the stress response. Right. That the stress response is there for specific times and specific places and specific circumstances. And in those specific times, places, and circumstances, the stress response of your body can be the thing that keeps you alive. In fact, that's what's happened for the last 180, 200,000 years of human evolution, right? That stress response, that fight or flight response in our body has led to you and me sitting here and discussing this podcast, right? If that wasn't the case, then human beings wouldn't be who we are now, right? And so anger is, well, let me back up for a second. So if stress is so important and so valuable and has been here is actually responsible for our entire evolution, at least partially, well, then how could it also be something that's harmful to us, right? And it is harmful. Okay. At this point, Dr. Mate, along with many, many, many other medical professionals, in fact, almost every doctor now who you would ask is going to tell you that almost every single dis-ease that can cause the human body damage is related directly, or maybe sometimes indirectly, but is related back to the stress that person lives with on a daily basis. And that's that. Right? I mean, that's, so it is that dangerous, right? But yet it is also something that's very, very helpful. So what does that mean, right? Well, what it means is that, like I always use the example of the gazelle on the African savanna, right? That's running away from a cheetah, right? The cheetah is trying to kill the gazelle because it wants to eat, right? And wants to feed its family. Nothing wrong with that, right? It's not a bad thing. It's not evil. It's just part of nature, trying to eat, right? The gazelle, on the other hand, really doesn't want to get eaten, right? Again, no judgment, no morals or anything. It's just run like heck to get out of there so I don't get eaten, right? But here's the thing. When a cheetah is chasing a gazelle, each of them feeling their own stress, because the cheetah's feeling stress too, you see. The cheetah is if the cheetah knows that if it spends all this energy running 60 miles an hour after this gazelle and it doesn't get the gazelle, now it doesn't have enough energy to go chase another animal, and it will die, right? It will starve. So there's stress on both ends here, right? And it's the same kind of distress that's happening in both places, right? Because distress is always the thing that comes from fear, right? If it's the positive kind of stress, which is just excitement, then fear is not there, right? The cheetah's afraid that he's not going to eat and therefore is going to die. The gazelle is afraid that it's going to die, right? So it's all fear and it's all stress, right? But here's the thing. The stress response, and each of them the stress response is doing the same thing for them, right? It's pumping up their heart. It's making their heart pump faster. Their blood pressure is higher. Their respiratory system is pumping real quick to get oxygen and blood going into the big muscles of the limbs, right? So the cheetah's going to run really fast, and the gazelle's going to hopefully run a little bit faster, according to the gazelle, that is. And but the whole thing is, though, that this stress response, this thing that helps these two animals to survive, well, this chase that's happening is only going to last for 3 minutes, maybe less, right? And so after that, there's a great doctor who Zapolsky, I believe his name is. I don't have that right. I'll look it up and I'll let you know tomorrow. But great doctor who deals with stress a lot, and he has this great saying that in 3 minutes, either the threat is over, so that the cheetah gave up and chased something else, or the gazelle is over in 3 minutes because the cheetah caught it. Either way, the gazelle does not need to be in stress, nor does the cheetah need to be in stress for more than a few minutes, right? And in fact, that's the thing, right? Is that when stress becomes more than a few minutes at a time, in the very sparing, appropriate times where it is actually useful to us, well, at that point, we can handle that for our whole lives and we'll never get sick, right? But the problem is that 77% of American adults, as I've said here many times, go into the stress response every single day. That is not that is not part of what we're designed to do, right? And that is ultimately going to cause illness. Okay. Anger is very much the same way. Right? Anger is there, and anger is something animals feel too, by the way. It's a very useful emotion, right? And so when an animal feels anger, right, what it's doing is it's snarling and it's roaring and it's barking and it's got a posture to it that looks menacing, right? The point of this is that if it spends that energy by showing this anger, maybe the foe, whichever animal, whatever the object of its anger, might be like, okay, I'm going to back away because I don't want to get hurt here. So what anger does is it helps to avoid the actual physical conflict, right? So it's almost like an emotional, like a signal that helps to avoid the ultimate, potentially very physically damaging conflict. Right. And it's the same thing we do as people, right? Like when we feel anger, what it is our body is erupting in something, in a rage to try to get away from me, right? Like that's the whole point, right? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, right? But if you only use anger in those sparingly appropriate times, right? Because again, just like the stress response, this is not something designed to happen all the time. It's designed to happen maybe a few times in your life, really. Like, maybe a couple times a year or something like that, but nowhere near every day, right? And so anger is the same way, right? That if we get into anger, if we get into anger, the emotion of anger every single day, well, then that's going to damage us. And it is very closely tied to the stress response, right? But so physically it's going to damage us, but it's also going to damage our lives, right? Because and this is what I know for a fact, right? That when you're that angry person, people don't take you seriously. People don't want to be around you. People don't accept you. People don't respect you. Accept or respect. People don't enjoy your company. And I hate to say it that way. I really do. And I don't mean that for you, right? Like I'm sure that that doesn't mean that nobody can love you if you're an angry person. Like I was an angry person, but I was also married with 2 kids, and I was not the only person there, but did that relationship that I have, was it as full and wonderful as it is now? Not by a long shot. Not by a long shot. So the key here is, right, as we examine the anger and as we make an effort to regulate ourselves in the face of the anger, what it is it comes down to the same thing that I'm always talking about here. And this is where it's just super simple, right? But it comes down to,